Hi footy fans, this is Professor Footy here with the next instalment of football analysis. So we recently saw Wayne Rooney's return to international football, and obviously had a friendly named after him and he got an official cap. So I don't want to go over whether or not that should have been the case. That was all covered in the mainstream media. As ever, here at Professor Footy, we like to do things slightly differently. So I actually want to analyse Wayne Rooney's career. I got into a bit of a debate when he came back the other week. I said that he had a terrible England career. He shouldn't be considered an England legend. I had a bit of pushback on that. Obviously, he's England's record goal scorer. So I'd like to make my case today about why, despite being England's record goal scorer of 53 goals, Wayne Rooney actually had a below average England career and only played well for 10 days out of 14 years for England. You all know the 10 days that I'm talking about. It was, of course, when he burst on the scene at Euro 2004. He was absolutely exceptional, scoring 4 goals in the 2 group games. Unfortunately got injured in the quarter-final. We may well have gone on to win it, who knows, and he was an absolute breath of fresh air. He didn't score again after that for 8 years at a major tournament. I mean, that is absolutely frightening, really. 8 years he went after that without scoring in a major tournament. That's the equivalent of Harry Kane, who obviously Golden Boot this summer, Harry Kane not scoring again until 2026 in a major tournament with England. And apparently Rooney's an England legend. As I say, he really did. He played well for 10 days out of 14 years, and it's absolutely staggering that we consider him an England legend. So obviously I'm not overlooking the fact that he got 53 goals. How did he do it? Well, he basically played for a very long time, much longer than his competitors, and just scored goals against Eastern European minnows in qualifying games, and just sort of got drips and drabs and managed to drag himself over the line, really, to break Bobby Charlton's record. But in terms of actual quality England strikers who have had good England careers and are England legends, he pales in comparison to Owen, Shearer and Lineker in terms of their productivity in the biggest games. So before I get into some statistics, I want to make it clear what I'm not saying here, what this argument isn't about. I'm not saying that Wayne Rooney wasn't a brilliant footballer. He was quite probably world class. We can have that debate another day. I'm happy to say he was world class. He's one of the best footballers I've ever seen that also happens to hold an English passport. Okay? So he was brilliant at football and he was English, but he had a terrible England career. Okay, it's not that difficult to work out, but those are the nuances of the argument. Just because he was brilliant, and just because he was English, it doesn't mean he played well for England, because he didn't. 10 days out of 14 years. That's how well he played. So I'd just like to go through a few stats here. What I'm going to highlight here is Rooney's lack of productivity. Okay, so Lineker scored 10 major tournament goals in the space of 4 years. Shearer, 9 major tournament goals in the space of 4 years. Owen got 6 major tournament goals in the space of 6 years. Rooney scored 7 major tournament goals, so it's 1 more than Owen, but it took him 12 years to do it. So it took him twice as long as Michael Owen just to get 1 more goal. So what it shows is that Wayne Rooney spent a large part of his England career not really doing a lot at all. He was exceptional at the start. He grabbed a few goals at the end, against Uruguay and Iceland, which we'll come to in a minute. But in terms of major tournaments, to just go on an 8-year barren spell is really quite unacceptable for somebody who wants to be called a legend. What I'd also like to highlight with the people that I just mentioned there is how they always turned up in the biggest games for England. So the biggest game of Lineker's career for England was a World Cup semi-final. He scored, then he scored a penalty in the shootout, which we lost. The biggest game of Shearer's England career, Euro 96 semi-final, he scored, then he scored his penalty in the shootout, which we lost. The biggest Owen is absolutely lethal here. Owen scored in 3 massive knockout competitions in a row. Argentina, World Cup knockout, wonder goal. Brazil, World Cup quarter-final, which was Owen's, the furthest he ever got with England, scored after 5 minutes. Portugal, Euro 2004 quarter-final, scored again. every time Michael Owen played against top level opposition, Argentina, Brazil, Portugal, top level opposition in knockout stages of major tournaments, he scored for England. He was absolutely Mr. Reliable, and so was Shearer, and so was Lineker. Every single one of them scored in the biggest game of their England careers. What was the biggest game of Rooney's England career? It was the 2006 World Cup quarter-final. And what did he do? He stamped on Ricardo Carvalho and got sent off and let England down. I mean, this indiscipline cost England massively. It reared its head again 6 years later. In the build-up for the Euros, Rooney got sent off in the final qualifier, and he missed the first 2 group games of Euro 2012. But I think that's really telling that in the biggest game of his career, he got sent off, and in the biggest game of all the other guys' careers, consistently, they scored. Every single one of them scored every single time, without fail. So this is my assessment of Rooney's England career. I really think that he just hung around for a long time and managed to get over the line, scoring average goals against average opposition in games that didn't really matter. Most of his goals came in qualifiers. Yes, qualifying is important, of course we need to get there, but really, because of the standard of opposition, we could have played people like Defoe, Crouch, and still got through those qualifiers. You know, you really are playing against a lot of Eastern European minnows in those games. To highlight that point, out of Wayne Rooney's 53 goals, who was he most prolific against? Yeah, that's right, San Marino. 5 goals against San Marino for Wayne Rooney. He was an absolute punishing them there, so well done to him for that. Later on in his career, of course, he dropped back to central midfield and was just to the detriment of us bringing through our new quick, pacey way of playing, which we're so enjoying now. He just hung around in centre midfield, moving the ball far too slowly. His legs had gone, and it was really to the detriment of the English game that we clung on to him for so long. So I had to really look at his record and try and find what were the biggest goals he scored, because I couldn't think of anything other than the 2004, played well for 10 days out of 14 years. Other than 2004, I couldn't really think of any big games that he featured in or any great goals that he scored. So I had to do a bit of digging. He scored 1 World Cup goal, which was a group game against Uruguay, and he scored 1 knockout tournament goal ever, and that was a penalty against Iceland, which of course we went on to lose, probably the most embarrassing defeat in this nation's history. So I really have no evidence of Rooney turning up on the big stage and being productive for England at all. Burst on the scene, did absolutely nothing for 8 years apart from get sent off, arrive at tournaments injured and out of shape. Okay, it's not his fault that he got injured, but it still means he wasn't playing well. In the 2010 World Cup, he arrived with all sorts of personal problems, well documented in the media. The England fans booed him off, and he also reacted to them on TV as well. So it's really just been a mismatch of injuries, red cards, poor form, and we defenders of the Rooney position only have 10 days of Euro 2004 to fall back on. So that's my analysis of Wayne Rooney's England career. Just worth pointing out, he does have the worst strike ratio as well out of Lineker, Shearer, Owen, and of course Rooney. It just took him so long to get over the line and to break that England record. I just don't think it really means that much. There are so many games now. He certainly isn't considered as much of an England legend as the other guys that I mentioned in my eyes. So what do you think about it? Am I overreacting? Do you think Rooney's a legend because he scored 53 goals? Or do you have to produce in the biggest moments, in the latter stages of tournaments, to really be considered an England legend? Harry Kane's already had a better England career than Wayne Rooney in terms of productivity. 6 goals at a World Cup, reached a semi-final, which Rooney never did. And remember, if Kane doesn't score for another 8 years in major tournaments, he'll be on the same trajectory as Wayne Rooney was. Will that be enough to make Kane a legend? Just think about that. If you'd like to debate me on anything about football, come and have a go if you think you're smart enough. I'm Professor Footy, signing out.